Today on the program we are making a smoked beer. If you have never gone to my brew log, you can go to donosborne.com and find it. I've got every beer I've ever made going back to 2001. Pictures, notes. If you search the page for Rauch, you'll see 7 results. I forget that it's a type of beer that I like to make. And if you search for smoke, some of them are the same beers. 9 results. There's some, like there's a couple smoked Helles that wouldn't be with the Rauch name. But if you want to, you can go there and look at all my past smoked beers. But what we're doing today, I'm calling it still Smokin' Rauchbier. So we're gonna do 5 pounds of the Weyermann Rauch malt. That's the most common kind of smoked malt you'll find. 5 pounds Vienna, 2 pounds of Briess Cherrywood. Now, and just an ounce of German Tradition. Now you can make a beer with 100% of that Weyermann smoked malt, and I've done it, and it's not crazy smoky because that particular malt is not very intense on the smoke flavor. That's the one that goes back many years, but since then, or since I started making these in more recent years, this Briess Cherrywood is a little more intense. But the other thing is you can now get oak smoked wheat. I made a beer with that last year. That's on the brew log. You can also get lots of other smoked malts from what I would call craft maltsters. I don't have any off the top of my head. I know Chip has done some of that and ordered some of that. You can get Alder smoked. I mean, just like any kind of applewood, any kind of different woods, probably different types of malts. So if that's of interest, maybe we can touch on that in the tasting notes of this beer. What I did is I will have a clip after this clip I shot last night about the 3 jars of washed yeast. So you can see that it is fermenting in the starter. It's not quite as crazy, like robust and active as, sometimes. It's been in the 20s and 30s here, but today it's going to be a little bit warmer, and it's in the 40s, and we're still in our fall time, so I feel like it's a good time for, let me shut this off, for the smoked beer. So this is not going to be a dark beer. I'm not adding any malts to make it extra dark. It will be, pale, deep yellow or light brown or something. But anyway, basically we're just going to do the normal brew day. It's probably going to be in the 1050s. And you can see the ladder over there. It's gutter cleaning day as well. That's the annual fun thing to do when the leaves get in the gutters. But anyway, yeah, just gonna be a typical brew day, and hopefully this thing will ferment and we'll get a medium smoky beer out of it. I don't do a hot scotchy every time, but with the Rauch beer wort, I thought I would. Okay, so spent grain, 6.5 gallons under these blankets. Here are these jars. They're pint jars at most of this washed yeast, and you can see I have a little bit in each one. Now they're darker, but I'm going to pour off most of all that liquid. That's the brown porter. And the other thing is, this liquid is not a Pilsner like, lightness, although it is fairly light. So if it gets a little bit of color, a tiny bit of color from this, it won't be a big deal. And like I said, I'm going to pour off almost all that wort anyway. And yeah, the starter is going here, and we'll get that going soon. So here is the color. As you can see, it's fairly light. You think of a Rauch beer as being darker, and I think I even made a pale Rauch beer one time. I called it that, and you just would have to add some dehusked Carafa 3 type stuff or whatever to make it darker, but I think it's kind of fun to not have it be as dark. Now, a couple observations at this early point. The gravity is not quite as high as I thought, because I ended up with a little bit more than 5 gallons. So I have a little bit over 5 gallons in the fermenter, but then I'm going to pitch this whole starter. So, give this a quick smell. Yeah, smells okay. Actually, the slightly darker color to this, well, I mean, if it shades this new beer a tiny bit darker, that would be okay, but it probably won't change it much. But hopefully this yeast starter will be sufficient. It wasn't quite as bubbly as I would like, but it was fermenting and it smells like yeast. Now the other observation, pretty myself up here, is it's not overly smoky. I mean, I would call it right now, just from this initial kind of just brew day, that it's like light medium smoke, and I was going for more like medium plus, but we'll see. It doesn't have to be overly smoky, and people that might come by my way, if they don't really like overly smoky beers, then that's just as well. But it's also just to see if you can make a moderately smoky beer if you want to dip your toe into the world of smoke beers, if you've never even had one. Which was, the case for me at some point. And then I had my first one, and I liked it right away, but it can take some getting used to. So anyway, I'm going to button all this up, try to keep this fermentation below 70, which really shouldn't be a problem. Just got to figure out where to put it in the house. We'll see how she goes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the tasting notes. Welcome to Chip Walton. Actually, I don't know what the view is. Michael Dawson. There we go. Cheers, fellas. Woo. Look at that. I think we were maybe trying to do a real-time hangout, and that didn't work out. And then we tried one virtual, and it also didn't work out. But here we are. So this beer, let's just get to the point. It got down to 1.008. I was fermenting it around 66F. It was the Imperial House yeast that I do have the clip earlier of the washed yeast, and then I made a starter. So basically, we're just going to talk about, do we like smoke beers? How smoky is this beer? How does it taste? It's not dark, as I already remarked earlier in the video. I also remarked on brew day, smelling the wort sample on brew day was not very smoky at all. And I kind of thought, okay, there's a lot of sugar in there, but I thought I would get some smoke, and I was hoping it would come out in the end. So what do you get off of this beer?
I would say the first thing I get is that the base malt is not your typical base malt. It's not a Pils, it's not a pale, it's not a two-row. Like, the fact that it's Vienna doesn't surprise me, because this beer has like a really dense malt character underneath the smoke, whereas like maybe like a Pils and smoked malt would be way more like crisp, almost like clean palate, whereas this has like, it almost seems like Maris Ottery smoky beer.
It's got a really rich malt nose. I agree with Chip. And then that super dry attenuated finish kind of belies it. I think if it was a little bit like more viscous in the texture and had some juniper character to it, I could believe this was a Kvike. The smoke is super prevalent. It's phenol city, man. It's nice and aggressive, but I like that.
I appreciate you guys commenting on that Vienna, because to be honest, when I've just been taking this beer off the tap and drinking it, I'm not looking at the recipe list, and I kind of forget that I did that. And I did that on purpose to see if it would make a difference. And a lot of the other beers I've made probably were just, if there weren't all Rauch malt from Weyermann, they were probably with the two-row pale or something like that. So that is, I kind of tend to agree, but I kind of forget about that when I'm tasting it.
Yeah, I think it's a good strategy, honestly. I mean, because if it was just a much cleaner Pils kind of based smoky beer, it would just be like crispy and smoky. But this almost gives you like a smoked bread. I don't know if people actually smoke bread to cook it. I don't think so, but I'm trying to think of like what that analogy would be.
Sure.
But yeah, from drinking, I was just like, it's a little fuller bodied. It's got definitely a more toasty residual kind of sweetness that's really nice with that smoke on top of it. And this is the cherry wood, which is different than kind of like the Rauch malt that we know.
Yeah. Now, I also did that on purpose because I think that the cherry wood is more potent in smoke character than the Rauch malt, but I didn't want to use a ton of it. So I thought 2 pounds of that in a 12-pound grist would be add a little, as I like to say, je ne sais quoi, but not be obnoxious. So I hope it does that.
So this is like a double smoked.
Well, one of my beers was called triple smoked Rauchbier because I think I had a home smoked malt from somebody, and then I
Yeah,
had
that's right. Yep.
a couple other ones. So yeah, I have dabbled, and like I said in the intro, I encourage people to look at my brew log and look at the different smoke things. Now, the question I like to ask is if this was if somebody was not that familiar with smoke beer, or even knew that they didn't like them, Paul Fowler, that much, what would they make of this beer? Be a little much for them, you think? Possibly.
I think if somebody wasn't a smoke beer fan, this one might be a bridge too far.
Really? Okay.
So it's getting to the fairly smoky categorization.
I would say yes. It's got a pretty lingering smoke character to it. It's like I used the word aggressive. It's not the smokiest beer I've had. I remember that triple smoked. And this is a little more turned down from that, but it's still like smoke is the dominant character.
In home smoked malt, in my experience, one particular person who shared some of his with me, that always gave my smoke beers a much stronger smoke character. Now, the other thing I tease in the beginning is there's craft maltsters that make smoked malt, and one that Chip mentioned was
Sugar Creek.
Sugar Creek. And if that's the one I'm thinking of on the website, there was just a number. I mean, how am I wrong? Isn't there like 10 plus?
Yeah, or 20 plus, because they do X amount that are like wood, cherry, apple, the ones you know, but then they do like pimento, which is supposed to almost like come off like a jerk seasoning kind of smell. But then they do like cold smoke with like lavender and herbs, and then the alderwood smoked, or the Soinhus, which is like, we won't go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
Yeah, they're making like Nordic tradition smoked malts. They're making, but they do them extremely small batch.
I'll try to link that website.
Yeah,
I have not ordered from them, but Chip has, and so they're an option to get.
I would say, I don't know. I'm gonna play the other side of the coin and say, I think this would be a good way to sneak someone into smoke beers, because I think it starts so much like a cream ale or a blonde, and then the middle becomes smoky, and then the end becomes smoky. Obviously, once you have that one time, you can't ignore it for every taste after that. But I feel like it's less of a jolt than, say, some of like the Rauchbier I first had from you in like 09 or whatever that was, where I was like, oh, I've never had anything like this. And it was like, it wasn't offensive, but it was just, I was not ready for it. Whereas this, I think, this is almost kind of like spotted cow in the front, smoke fest in the back.
It also reminds me of your first sip of an authentic lambic or a Guza. It's like, what am I drinking? It's so shocking. And then you know, they're like, oh, okay. And then after a while, you're not chugging it, but you get acclimated to it. And I think, even as we're sitting here, this gets less smoky, just the more sips that I take.
Yeah, the back end of this, as it warms and you get more used to it, is less smoky, and a little bit of that malt actually comes back out at the end, a little like cornbready kind of character.
Yeah, and it might be the first time I've used Vienna in this manner, and I'm glad.
I remember you asking me about like how much is cool to use, and I was like, some people say you can use all of it. Like,
you can make 100% Vienna or What's the other one? That's similar.
Munich.
Munich, exactly. Well, that's probably good for this video. We smoke for smoke on the Down Home program. And yeah,
good job,
comment, as always, comment on your own smoke beers experiences. And I also say that we're kind of coming into our fall time when I was making this, and now we're supposed to be in winter, but it was 50 degrees today, and now we might be having an ice storm tonight. But yeah, I think I hope I can get at least one campfire. In fact, I already have drank this around a campfire. That's always a fun thing to do with a smoke beer.
Okay.
All right. What else am I forgetting? I think that's it. I can edit this out. Doobie. All right. All right. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button.
Smoke.
And we'll catch you later. Bye.
Camp Rauchbier.
There you go.